Hello and welcome back to episode 4, 5? Hold on a second. How do I not know what episode I am on? We're on episode 5? That's crazy to me. Okay. Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Changing Room Thoughts. I'm your host, Karina Chan, and if you're not familiar with me, I love to talk all things fashion. If you've ever once had a critical thought about the clothes that you wear, then I'm your girl. I come out with new episodes every Monday morning, so you can listen to that on your way to work or wherever you're commuting, school, to babysit, whatever it is. I don't judge. Today, you may notice I am filming in a somewhat different background because I am in Italy. More specifically, I'm on the Amalfi Coast. I'm staying in Praiano with my family. I'm doing a 10-day vacation, and that is super exciting for many reasons. 1, the vacation fits. 2, the Italian fashion. And 3, because I personally love Italian designers. But it wasn't always this way because I wasn't always educated about fashion. I really started looking into and learning about designers when I started making some money for myself, because I never really learned about designers until I was able to consider buying from them. And then I decided to invest some time into thinking more thoroughly about why I'm spending thousands of dollars on designer fashion, like what is so special about these brands, what is the history behind these brands, etc., etc. And I went through quite a fashion journey, going through all of that, trying to figure out which brands I liked and why exactly, besides, oh, it's expensive. And so if you're also at that point in your journey, I want to provide for you Italian designers for dummies. I made a slideshow for this. This is how serious I am. On the plane ride over here, I made if you can see my computer, it says Italian designers for dummies. Anyways, if you are just starting out in fashion, or if you are very familiar with designers, but you just want to have a cute little chit chat or refresher about some names, I am your girl. So today I'm going to talk about what you need to know about these brands in the most basic terms. The kind of space I operate in, I do not like being elitist. I don't like being snobby. I'm not one of those type of fashion critics or commentators. And while I think there's space for that and it's necessary, I'm just going to assume that everyone that I'm talking to knows absolutely nothing about these designers. The brands I'm focusing on talking about today are a confluence of brands I personally like, and also probably household names that you've heard of but haven't actually registered or really gotten to know before. So I'm here to give you an introduction, talk to you about the history and what kind of persona I think wears these brands. Like, who are these designers for? Like, who is a Versace girl? Who is a Pucci girl? Etc. I can't get into every single Italian designers because there's so many Italian fashion brands, and I'm not interested in all of them, frankly. I'm not really interested in talking about Gucci. I'm not interested in talking about Valentino, even though these are very popular brands that you may have heard of. They just aren't my personal favorites, and I kind of want to share to you the brands that I really love and why. What are the house codes? And by house code, I mean recurring design practices that you'll see repeated throughout collections, throughout time for that particular brand. I think I only really have time for 3 designers today, and I'm going to talk about number 1, Versace, number 2, Prada/Miu Miu. I know I'm cheating by saying I'm going to talk about 3 brands, but Prada and Miu Miu are both honestly really helmed by the same woman. We'll get into that. And the third I want to talk about, which I think is a little less in the mainstream. It is in the mainstream if you're like really into fashion, but if you're not, you've definitely heard of Emilio Pucci, or maybe you haven't, but you might not be like really familiar with him. And I'm really excited to talk more about him because he's one of my favorites. And I know that, okay, if you've been listening to my podcasts or watching my TikToks for some time, then you will know that I start off every podcast episode with a fit check. My top is from Uniqlo and my skirt I thrifted. It's a bunch of roses. But honestly, I really wanted to wear instead would have been a much more apt outfit, but I was sweating in it all day, so I don't want to put it back on because I already showered. Selfishly, I'm talking about Emilio Pucci this episode because I want to show off my secondhand silk Pucci dress. And yes, I did that. She is my pride and joy, and I walked around Positano all day in her, and I felt like the belle of the ball, and I got called Bellissima many times, even though it was from creepy old Italian. It's okay. They recognize the Pucci. And I'll get into it later, but as you can tell, really beautiful geometric psychedelic prints is kind of Emilio Pucci's thing, but we'll get into that. Shout out to my girl Allison from Allison's Archive for sourcing this incredible piece. As a Pucci lover herself, I hope she appreciates this episode. Anyways, let's get into it. So the first brand I want to talk about, and you've definitely heard of this one, is it's not Versace, it's Versace. It was founded by Gianni Versace in 1978. So it's honestly not a super old brand. A lot of these European fashion houses have been around for a while. Some of them since like the 1800s. And what is really interesting about Versace is if you're at all familiar with Italian culture or you've been to Italy, etc., in particular southern Italy, the culture is really different from northern Italy. It's a little bit more like, how can I say, rambunctious, more like warm, more, I don't want to misspeak because I'm not from here, but the general sentiment is if you're from southern Italy, you're more of a country bumpkin. And when you're from northern Italy, you're more like, perhaps. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting. If this gives any indication at all behind the design ethos of Versace, it is this quote from Gianni. Versace dresses the mistress while Armani dresses the wife. Giorgio Armani is very notably a competitor to Gianni Versace at the time, and they cater to very different clientele. Versace is all about that beautiful, sexy, umptuousness that you really get, I guess, like growing up somewhere where it's constantly hot, where it's always vacation weather, it's very skin bearing, it's very romantic. And that's kind of, if you had to put one word behind Versace, it is sexy. Now, there's a whole like documentary about this, but Gianni Versace was murdered in 1997 in Miami, Florida. It's really tragic because Gianni loved spending time in Miami. Honestly, like kind of embodies the spirit of the house pretty well. It's a very warm, vacation, rambunctious culture, very similar to where Gianni Versace grew up, which was in Calabria, the very southern part of Italy, but not Sicily, the part that's like kicking, the part of the boot that's like kicking Sicily. And it used to be part of like the greater Greek area, which is why the house symbol is a Medusa head. And it's interesting that he chose the Medusa head because something about Versace is very like man-eater, if that makes any sense. Like if we're going to talk about like the house's vibes, we had to talk about the current creative director, Miss Donatella Versace herself. After Gianni was unfortunately murdered in Miami, Donatella became the creative director, and it was very much not a role that she wanted to be in, but more was like forced into. But Donatella Versace, if you've ever seen a photo of her, she is a very well-aged woman. Like she is a bombshell, completely like dyed platinum blonde hair, smoky makeup, just such a fabulous woman. She definitely embodies that very like vivacious southern Italian bombshell energy. Versace has done a lot of like collaborations with celebrities and muses. Donatella constantly like pulls in women that she feels like is the face of Versace, that embodies that confident, strong female energy, and that's something that they have historically consistently focused on. Versace, especially in the 80s and in the height of Gianni's career, really tapped into the power of supermodels. This fashion moment gets referenced way too often, but it was Naomi, Cindy Crawford, Christy Turlington, Linda Evangelista. Anyways, Gianni notably paid supermodels a lot of money to exclusively walk for him, and it kind of like solidified this brand as like the hot party girl brand. And that's kind of the design ethos. The Versace woman gives off Leo energy. Like she's the life of the party kind of a person. She goes to the hottest clubs. She probably knows a drug dealer or two, but she's still very much a girl's girl. She's very like bimbo girl coded, but in a reclaimed way. Not in like a literal way. So for example, like someone that Donatella, I find this relationship so interesting, but Donatella Versace and Emily Ratajkowski have like a really great relationship. I love Emily Ratajkowski's podcast, by the way. And she interviews Donatella. I love that episode because they're both just like such a fan of each other and it's really cute. But they were talking about how they're both in their like bitch era. And I think that personifies exactly the Versace energy so well. So yeah, it's very bimbo girl, but in a subversive way. The Versace girl loves fun, deep colors like eggplant, chartreuse in like the most recent spring summer collection, yellow. Prints, you've probably seen way too much of like the Versace kind of like filigree motif, but they also do so many amazing, like the most recent collection was this checkerboard print. They've done like mermaid core themed starfish prints. Like it's just so fun and the perfect stuff to wear like on vacation. I really wish I had some of the spring summer 21 ready to wear collection because that would have been perfect for a southern Italy vacation. Some house codes. Gianni Versace became really well known for his use of chainmail. They're well known as these like liquid metal dresses because he found a way to cut the metal so that it flows and like fits to a woman's body and it's not rigid. And they're not sequins. I've kind of touched one in person before. It's cold. It's like fully metal. And so I think that's something that you'll see recurring and almost in every single Versace collection because it's just such a signature and so unique and innovative. One thing I think that they should do is work on their bags. I think that their bags are kind of lacking. And in fashion, I find bags to be like the greatest. Accessories are like so important in fashion for revenue, but also just for practicality. Like you might not be able to buy like really expensive clothes all the time, but you can afford like one really expensive bag that's going to make the rest of your outfit look amazing, right? And I think Versace is really lacking in that. They have those like kind of V-shaped, it looks like a zipper, like an undone zipper bag, and I don't like it that much. I don't know what is up about it. Something about it is not right. And I also don't like the bags where like it's just a V with like filigree on the V. I just think it's kind of lazy. What I don't understand that they don't do more is put that liquid metal on their bags. Like it is such a unique signature thing. And I feel like Paco Rabanne looking type bags are really trending right now. At least I'm not familiar I haven't seen them use the liquid metal fabric or technique on their bags, but if I'm wrong, please let me know. In my opinion, that's kind of a lost opportunity. One thing I do think that they're quite well known for though, and that people buy a lot of, is their sunglasses because of the big Medusa head motif on the sides, and they look really cool. I will give them that. Okay, next brand / fashion house I want to talk about is Prada / Miu Miu. Now, why are these two grouped together? If you didn't know, the creative director at Prada and Miu Miu are both Miuccia Prada. Prada itself has been around for a long time, since 1913, and was founded in Milan by Mario Prada. Originally, Prada was a leather goods shop that sold steamer trunks and handbags, so they were very much catering to this like the aristocrats kind of a situation. And Mario Prada, ironically, also did not believe that women should be in business. But it's hilarious because Miuccia Prada has been at the head of Prada since 78. That's a long time. And honestly, she's kind of girl boss. I did a TikTok video on her. I deep dived like her whole story. She has a PhD in political science. Like, isn't that crazy? She actually didn't even want to be the creative director of Prada. She just kind of like inherited it from her family. It's really ironic because like growing up and all throughout her education, she was a pretty extreme like leftist. And so when she was kind of forced into this position, she ended up really liking it because she does have an eye for design and a love for the arts. And so, can't blame her. But the reason why I find Prada so interesting is because she has this background as this like progressive leftist woman with a PhD, and she kind of like hates the whole aristocratic stuffy fashion scene. So if you notice, like a lot of Prada stuff is very like dorky cute, and a lot of it is designed very much with like this busy intellectual woman in mind, because that's who Miuccia is. And that's why she introduced the whole concept of the nylon bags. So you've probably seen these like nylon Prada bags that were all the rage in the early 2000s and kind of came back like during COVID time. But the reason why she used this nylon is because it's like military grade nylon or something like that, super high quality nylon. So it's super durable. It's not as fussy as like leather or suede or velvet. And that's the whole point. Like a woman who is busy, who has shit to do, places to be, doesn't really want to like fuss. One thing I really appreciate about Prada is its materiality. She absolutely transformed the brand. After she introduces like nylon, and specifically that nylon backpack, that's when Prada really like blows up. In 1992, Prada is super successful and all of that. And then Miuccia Prada starts Miu Miu. Miu Miu, if you've noticed, sounds a lot like Miuccia, and that's because it's her nickname, which is really cute, and not that many people know that. So Miuccia Prada starts Miu Miu in 1992. And while Prada is kind of like this intellectual, working, kind of like more serious working woman who has an eye for the arts and design, Miu Miu is kind of like her quirky, fun, younger cousin. The designs are just like slightly more whimsical. I think also Miu Miu kind of has a soft spot in my heart because growing up, I always saw the girls carrying those like matelas, textured leather hobo bags. And I always thought that they were so cute and I always wanted one. And in like 2018, I was even considering buying like a really beat up one secondhand. But that style has just always really like appealed to me. And if you look at early 2000s Miu Miu, it looks very much like almost like same era early aughts like Juicy Couture type of bags. Like the Miu Miu girl back then, I feel like was also wearing a Juicy Couture tracksuit with her like little ruffly Miu Miu bag. So yeah, a Prada girl is like the quirky intellectual girl. And when I think about the girls that I know that like Prada, they always tend to be like the STEM girls that also are artsy. So like the STEAM girls. Yeah. And yeah, so if you look at like early 90s, 2000s Miu Miu, it's very like slightly awkward silhouettes, like a little more modest. It's like less focused on the sexy, more focused on like the hot librarian look, slightly sporty. I also think that the reason why Miu Miu has been popping off lately has been because like that kind of dorky aesthetic is coming back with the rise of what I call core, which is those like little glasses, kind of like hot librarian look. And I think Miu Miu is a great design example of that. I feel like a Prada girl would be kind of like an Aquarius. I think Prada girls definitely appreciate like going to the symphony sometimes or the orchestra. You know what I mean? Like I can see a Prada girl maybe in their youth playing like a string instrument. I don't know why that makes sense. It just does in my head. Okay, the next Italian designer I want to get into is Emilio Pucci. And I kind of recently got into Pucci. I'm not gonna lie, after Daphne wore that Pucci swimsuit in season 2 of White Lotus, I've been influenced ever since. But I do really appreciate just something about this aesthetic really scratches an itch in my brain, and I feel like it's really just gonna be timeless whenever. Like Pucci started out in the 50s and we still think his shit is good. I think that really says something. Anyways, so Emilio Pucci is a really interesting guy. I started doing some research into him during dinner actually in Italy because I was curious about his life. And he was actually a politician at one point. Emilio Pucci was an Italian aristocrat, fashion designer, and politician. Emilio Pucci had joined the Italian Air Force and served as a torpedo bomber pilot during World War II. I was trying to read kind of the history behind Pucci, and I don't really understand Italian history that well, like World War history. Kind of fuzzy to me. I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna be really honest here. And Wick says that Pucci was a confidant of Benito Mussolini's eldest daughter Etta and played a key role in a plan to save the life of her husband, Mussolini's former prime minister, Count Galeazzo Ciano, who was on trial for his part in the removal of Mussolini from power. So does that mean that he's an ally? I don't know. He's been through a lot through the World War. He was arrested and thrown into prison where he was tortured by the Gestapo. So that sounds pretty intense. Anyways, he became a fashion designer after that. Hee hee ha ha. When he was in college, he started designing for the ski team. Fun fact, he actually was the first person to design a one-piece ski suit. I feel like that's a hotly debated fact, probably, but pretty cool. And after the resounding success of his ski suit design, he created a haute couture house in Capri. And in 1949, he moved on. So he started his house this was in 1940. In 1949, he started to use his knowledge of like stretch fabrics from his ski suit days to make swimwear and other items like bright, boldly patterned silk scarves. And by the
60s, he became kind of a mainstay in fashion. And whenever people think of 60s fashion, they think of Emilio Pucci with his psychedelic designs and geometric prints. And it very much just resounded well with kind of the space age aesthetic happening at the time. Marilyn Monroe became a fan. Jackie Kennedy wore Emilio Pucci, Sophia Loren. And even in the 1990s, when there was like a 60s revival happening, Madonna was a big fan. Something that I find also really interesting is that Pucci ended up designing 6 complete collections for Braniff airline hostesses. And exactly as you would think, like it looks like a space age, like utopia. Really, one of my favorite fun facts is that he came up with these bubble helmets that flight attendants could wear on their heads to like protect their hairstyles underneath a Pucci scarf so they wouldn't like mess up their coiffed hair between flights. It just looks so insane. Like, I don't know. I just think that that's really interesting. I feel like the Emilio Pucci girl is a Gemini because not only was Daphne in White Lotus hella two-faced, like, I guess obviously because she was cheating on her husband, but also like, of course, I'm a Gemini, but I think like Pucci girls are just like, they like to have fun and they also like to party, but in a different way than Versace girls. I think they're a little bit more quirky. They're obviously kind of more into psychedelics and that whole Pucci girls definitely have an old soul, like something inside them just wants to be at home, crochet, I don't know. And there is also something really escapist about Pucci girls. Like if you're drawn to clothing like this, you're probably the kind of person that also likes to dress in a way to make yourself feel a specific kind of emotion or evoke a particular image that makes you feel like you're far away from your everyday. I think that's why Pucci is so like popular for vacation outfits, because it's very escapist and fun and loud in a way where it feels like you wouldn't be able to just wear a Pucci dress like normally, like just to work or to the grocery store or something like that. Like, of course you could, and you should do whatever you want, wear whatever you want, wherever you go. But there's something very special about a Pucci dress that makes you want to wear it in like a very special place or location. Those 3 designers wrap up my Italian designers for dummies part 1. Perhaps if I decide to make this a series, but these are just designers that I personally really like, that I feel like jive with my personal style, my personality. I hope that you found something new and interesting from today's episode. Please, if you enjoyed it, leave a 5-star rating. It helps me out a lot and I appreciate it very, very, very much. And thanks for tuning in. Can't wait to check in with you guys next Monday. Bye.